Y'all, what you're about to see is some of the wildest Wiz content I've ever seen in my entire time playing Wiz. I'm not exaggerating, y'all. Today they did a stream, the people that work on Wizard101, about the new upcoming spell fusion feature. Now, other than a teaser that we got on Wednesday of them combining a ghoul and a Stormzilla, we know literally nothing about how this works. But after the stream, now there's a lot. Not only do we know the rules of this feature, we also have a bunch of new fused spells that you can make from this feature that have never been seen before. Let's jump right into it. Let's say that the spell fusion feature, let's say that you have some spells, you want to combine some, where do you start? So it looks like you're going to be able to start by learning a spell fusion formula from trees across the spiral. Now, based on the teasers, we'll get some new spell fusion formulas from the trees in Ravenwood, the ones that we are very familiar with. We'll also get some really intricate spell fusion formulas from trees that are in the upcoming area of Selenopolis. Now, keep in mind, they did say this UI is like a work in progress. It does look a little janky. Regardless of how it looks, the big takeaway is you will need a training point for every fusion that you want to attempt. Now, they did say in a previous dev stream that, let's say that you are a storm like me and you want to weave death magic into your spells, right? Once you go down that route, you'll have access to all these, like, you know, storm death spells, but it will box you out of other spells, right? You can only weave into one school. They also did say that this is reversible, so I'm wondering if, let's say that you spend a training point of weaving into a school, and let's say that you want to weave into another school, do you get the training point that you spent on the fusion formula back? I think that's something that hopefully is a thing, because otherwise you might make the wrong choice and just lose a training point and you would have to buy it back. I feel like that's a little stupid. So while I think the fact that it costs training points isn't really a big deal, maybe they could add some extra training point quests in the upcoming update. Hopefully you get the training point back if you decide to weave into another school. That's like a really big thing that I hope they're listening to people on. But the second you learn a fusion formula, it looks like they've added a tutorial from the homie Diego. And I really like this, y'all, because I feel like, you know, obviously, you know, clicking a ghoul onto a Zilla, it might not seem like a big deal, but for some people, like, you know, like you want to make sure that everyone has access to this. Now, speaking of access, right, not only did they add a tutorial from Diego on basically just introducing you to the system, it also looks like the rules are very inclusive. Right now, right, because of spell elements, things have gotten a little bit complicated, especially because if you're a PvE type of person, you're probably going to do the top path. If you're not, you'll probably do the utility path, which is the bottom path. And that creates multiple versions of a lot of spells, which could complicate things with something like spell fusion. But basically what the rules are, right, if two spells can be fused to make another spell, it doesn't matter if you use the bottom path, the top path, or an unspellmented version altogether. Why is this such a big deal? Because some people will want to use this in advanced content. Some people are just going to want to use it in casual content. Now, using the example of the Grimzilla, you could click a ghoul onto a Zilla in order to make a Grimzilla, or the other way around. And what's really cool is you could even use item cards from your pets in this new spell fusion feature. The only thing that seems like you cannot use it are TC. Now, here's what I think is actually my favorite part about this. I think they're actually trying to go out of their way to make it very intuitive. Keep in mind, this is early doors. I don't think they've actually gotten this function completely done. You know, I think it's still, you know, it's still test run. But what you see on your screen is what the cards that you have learned that are a part of a spell fusion formula look like in your hand. Once again, real simple. Let's say that you learned the spell fusion formula for Grimzilla. That means that any time that you have a ghoul in your hand or a Zilla in your hand alone, it'll glow like this. It'll glow like a yellow glow. And what that symbolizes is, oh, this spell is a half of one of your formulas. You know, just keep that in mind. You have a formula learned. This could be used as a ghoul, but this could also be used as a part of another spell. Now, let's say you pull the other part of the formula, right? Then both of the cards that are part of the formula glow green. This is like, I guess, a way to like tell you that, oh, these cards are special. I like this because I feel like, you know, sometimes in the heat of the moment, you might not even be thinking about what a spell can do as a part of another spell. And let's say in this image, you clicked on the ghoul or the Zilla, every other card except the corresponding part of the formula will gray out. I really like what they're doing with the tutorial. I really like what they're doing with the green and yellow outline. I think that's a really W touch. But I think my favorite part, because I already said I had a favorite, but I have another one. You're rewarded by using this feature, even if you don't meet the condition of the card. Using Grimzilla as an example, right? The actual spell does way more damage at 6 pips than a normal death card. Now, let's talk about some of the limitations of this, because it on the surface, it looks very overwhelming. They made a new spell for every single combination of weaving that exists in this game. That means every school will have a new spell, depending on which school that they weave into, which is 6 options per school. However, those are exclusive to that school. I think that's a really, really big deal. So for example, right, if you're a fire weaving into ice, that spell that you get for doing that is only usable by fire wizards, not ice wizards, even if it is an ice school spell. And let's say that you're an ice weaving into fire, you'll get a new spell altogether. The reverse combinations are new spells, new formulas. So what that means is really per school, you're actually going to have access to 6 new spells, and also they're exclusive. There is still going to be school identity, even with all this weaving, right? A Death Storm combo literally is not the same as a Storm Death combo because the spells aren't the same. Now, the big elephant in the room is, right, no matter what you weave into, you're gonna end up with a spell that's not your school. So for example, right, in Storm's case, all 6 of the new formulas that are coming this update are not Storm spells. What that means is dual school damage, dual school accuracy, dual school pierce. All of those better be completely accessible, because otherwise you're gonna lose too much damage output or anything. Like, you're gonna just lose too much utility for going into another school. So we'll see how that goes, but as long as the actual ability to actually deal damage is possible, that's great. The very good news for casual players is these are gonna be enchantable. That's a very, very big deal. So I'll say this, for PvE, it's very user-friendly. You can use enchants. If you fizzle the card, it'll come back in its completed form. If you reshuffle it, it'll come back in its completed form. It works very, very similar to enchant, so I don't think it'll be hard for casual players to pick up. In PvP and other advanced content, it's really going to come down to the damage output that you can do with another school spell. Now, as if all of this information wasn't enough, it looks like we'll have 2 types of fusion available to us in this update. Earlier in this video, I said we're going to have fusion formulas from the main trees and the new trees in Selenopolis. The main trees are going to teach us formulas that pertain to mono fusion. What you see on your screen is one example that we did get in the dev stream today. And what this formula basically is you get a new spell in Selenopolis and you can combine it with Ice Trap to make a new hit and ice fuel spell. I'm extremely excited to see if the other formula on this, I don't think they teased it, is like a completely different utility, maybe with Tower Shield or something like that. The mono fusion alone, absolutely epic. I feel like if they scaled this out, you could make any base hit into like a hit and trap at varying pip costs. Maybe you could customize how many pips you want like a hit and shield to be like on a knife, right? The options are actually quite endless. I really like this mono fusion feature. I think that's something that anyone can use very, very easily. Now, as far as the non-mono fusion spell, these holes unironically leaked 10 out of the full 42 spells that we're gonna get in this update. So I thought I'd go through them kind of rapid fire, but I feel like they're really, really cool. What you see on your screen is a lightning dragon. You get this when you're a fire that weaves into storm. Keep in mind, only a fire can use this spell, but it does 900 storm damage, a ridiculous amount of damage for 6 pips, even if it's a fire using it. And if your opponent has heals, you can clear up to 2 of them to add extra fire overtimes on it. This is gonna be a little weird because the fire OTs are gonna use up your fire blades, which is a little bit whack. But honestly, the sheer damage output of this, if you're actually clearing heals, is ridiculous. This is probably better than Triton for fire. If you're an ice weaving in a storm, you can access the new Tempest Wyvern spell. It does a whopping 840 damage. And it also gives ice the ability to overtime clear. This is not something that has been available to ice basically at all, but you can turn overtimes into ice trap. Very important, considering the Zilla change that happened recently actually makes overtime counters very bad. This is something that you could use in PvP very, very easily if you choose to weave into storm. If you're a life weaving into death, there's this new spell called the Gorda Leprechaun. This doesn't introduce anything new for life in terms of clearing. You can always clear traps. However, for clearing those traps, instead of making blades like you normally expect from the life school, you're getting school-specific weaknesses on your opponent. Situational for sure. Still very, very cool for just a simple 4 pip. The next one might be one of my personal favorites, Medusas Fury. Now, this is a very important one to look at because what are you combining? You're combining a Medusa and a Elephant. So if you're a myth weaving into fire, which I would argue is probably something we'll end up seeing because they have a lot of synergy, you're combining an 8 pip spell with a 6 pip spell, but you're only getting a 4 pip spell, which shows that pip cost is not like tied to the original spells that you use. And for 4 pips, not only do you do a whopping 500 damage, but let's say that you have traps on your opponent, you could also use those up to get even more overtime damage. I'm gonna assume the more traps that you gambit or use up from your opponent, the more, you know, overtimes that you have, so you could create a double overtime out of this hit. If you're an ice weaving into fire, you get the new spell Evil Magma Man. I don't know how this damage even makes sense. Obviously, keep in mind, right? In PvP, and ice is still going to be capped at ice damage per pip. So the damage that you see, right, for 6 pips, it looks ridiculous, but it's still going to be ice DPP. So it's only going to be multiplied by a maximum of 40 something pierce, 170 something damage, right, into like a brace. This isn't going to do much even when an ice casts it. And keep in mind there's a limitation that you have to combine a fire elf with an evil snowman, like in the heat of battle. But this is crazy. It's a quintuple weakness clear that can turn those weaknesses in overtimes, and the base spell is also an overtime. Definitely a weirdly complicated spell, but I would say that fire ice could be a very cool combo off of this spell alone. Let's say that you do the opposite combo. You're a fire weaving into ice. The spell that you unlock doing that is called Cryo Cat. This is a weird ass spell. It does a bunch of damage. It also detonates overtimes, I think, just naturally. And then let's say that your opponent has blades on. You can actually clear them as a fire. You can clear blades and turn those into overtimes as well. I feel like the detonate kind of conflicts with clearing blades for overtime, so I think this is a good example of a card that might actually act against its own interests because they're combining schools in such a weird way. If you're death going into life, right, the opposite of what we had before, you can combine Banshee and Centaur to unlock a spell called Green Blight. Now, this is a trap counter on death, which is actually really, really cool. And what I really like about it is it turns traps into infections, something that death can use perfectly. This is easily the best trap counter I've ever seen for death because you can literally turn traps into something that's actually usable for you. If you're a balance weaving into storm, you can unlock this atrocious 3-pip spell that does about 500 damage, and it also adds a 55 trap if you have an overtime on yourself. So this is very similar to what, like, you know, balance does. They don't tend to clear things. They tend to, like, you know, do stuff because you have stuff on you, and it combines that with the anti-overtime identity of storm to create a massive hit that can immediately shift the tempo in your favor. They also gave us a myth weaving into balance. This spell fusion is really, really weird, but it does quite a bit of damage for 4 pip, and it can clear up to 3 weaknesses for what it looks like to be up to 3 detonates. Myth does have like double overtimes that, you know, like stay on your opponent for a bunch of rounds. This could be a really cool way to detonate them simply for clearing weaknesses, something that you'll probably expect out of an overtime. And finally, the last spell fusion that was teased today, we have if a life weaves in a myth, you can combine Centaur and Minotaur to create a Centaurian. And oh my god, do I love this. This is a shield counter for life that turns up to 5 shields into up to 5 life blades. Easily might be one of the coolest new utilities. I would deeply consider being a life weaving into myth off of this because shields are very annoying to deal with. All in all, y'all, there's a few takeaways. If they get this training point, you know, refund situation good, it's very, like, you know, flexible. I'll say based on the tutorial, based on the fact that you can enchant fuse spells, and the fact that they have like a yellow and green glow, that this is a pretty user-friendly thing. Hopefully approachable for people that feel intimidated by this, which is very valid. And as long as they get the actual damage output using another school, kind of, if they need to get that down in advanced content, this could be a complete game changer for literally every school. It's looking like a really good feature so far. Obviously, it's early. It's too early to say because there's still like 32 other cards using this new spell fusion feature that we haven't seen yet. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I wanted to make a full video talking about everything we knew, so hopefully this was informative. Let me know what you guys think about the spell fusion feature. Let me know what you guys think about the new spells I got teased today. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new, and if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon, and yeah, y'all.